I was very attracted to exhaust systems for some reason. It was literally like God coming and saying कि बेटा तुम बनाओगे exotic exhaust दुनिया में आके. There was a lot really happening at the workshop at the background. So we were trying to build a very different kind of project, which was actually a dual sport motorcycle. The learnings we had from this build, they basically went back to each and everything we did at the workshop. Question is, how do you make a business really viable? Like, how do you make things run? So that's where the other aspect of my, IT job comes in. So I would say, my journey as a custom builder is not really something that I'd really planned for as such, And it's like a very ordinary person, in the teenage years, you really obsessed with motorcycles, as such. And then that translated into other things. So we started with a very small group. We were basically just 3 people, and one of them is right here, right? And that's my fabricator. So as I was telling you guys, that it basically is a normal teenage person obsessed with motorcycle. You love the wind in your face and in your hair, when I had hair, and essentially waiting for the legal age to get going, and whatever it takes to convince your parents to get your first motorcycle, that kind of a thing. So when I got my first motorcycle, I looked up these pictures of other motorcycles on the internet, and I was like, hey, my bike looks really nothing like it, so what's going on? So that's really where it all began. So during my high school days, I would spend the afternoons, at my new found friend, a metal fabricator, So even during school days, a lot of times I would skip school and I would be there, trying to build this dream of whatever I had, So these are actually the first bikes that I built back then. And it's a bit strange, So when I landed up in, I thought I'll, build a motorcycle, do this, do that, So what part do you begin with? So it's very interesting. I was very attracted to exhaust systems for some reason. It was literally like, God coming and saying कि बेटा तुम बनाओगे exotic exhaust दुनिया में आके. So it really started with just building exhausts. And it kept going on. We built a few examples, and I think as time passed, close friends of mine, they started to reach out to me, that, hey, can you help us with my builds? Can you help me build exhaust to up my bike? So another 5-6 years passed. And this was somewhere in, I think in 2012, that was really, doing one of the regular cafe races for a friend, and stumbled across India Bike Week. So life till that point was pretty okay. It was going on fine. So India Bike Week, yes, it's going to be a big festival, first time happening in India. We had not seen a bike show ever before. So chit-chat with the folks, and we actually were here in Goa with our first build. And it's very interesting that we didn't really know what to expect. And when I reached here, I saw the other motorcycles which were here, and they had this intricate artwork and fancy paint graphics, and I was like, hey, we have nothing of that. We're quite a bit uncomfortable actually to begin with. So we engaged in drinking beer, but things changed. I think by the evening we started to see some crowd, at the stall where we had the bike. I think by the middle of the second day, we ran out of the visiting cards, and we had quite a few of them. And by the end of the show, someone indicated to us that, we should probably think about, participating in the bike build-off competition next year. So with those thoughts, we went back. The next year, we came back with another motorcycle, which is also based on a Yamaha 350. And we again didn't have any graphics on the bikes. But the exhaust, as I mentioned earlier, were a piece of art. We got very appreciated for the motorcycle, and in fact, it went to win the biker build-off in the open class. So that's really, that really got me thinking, hey, that this can really be something that, we can take forward. I can think about doing it full time. So between then and the next few years, we built a lot of cafe racers, scramblers, based on the Yamaha 350 A-cooled engines. And this was sort of strange because it was not really a motorcycle of choice for doing, build-offs as such. So we sort of focused on them. I would say we sort of carved a name for ourselves in building these bikes. So that kept going on. Now, while these bikes, they would go to these shows, a lot of times at the India Bike Week, majorly, and get appreciated. There was a lot really happening at the workshop at the background. So we were trying to build a very different kind of project, which was actually a dual sport motorcycle. So if you would go back to let's say 7 8 years, we didn't really have a proper dual sport motorcycle in India as such. So we thought this is a problem that we would take upon ourselves to solve. Now the thought sounded easy, but then when we started to get to building one of these, it was quite challenging. We ran into a lot of issues. We were trying to repurpose a very modern, cutting-edge motorcycle. So we had issues with fuel pressure. We had issues with keeping the motorcycle motor cool, and so on. The issues never went away. And to the point that, my boys, they were literally like, there used to be a joke around, like, kya maza aa raha hai aapko ye karke? There's no payback in doing this stuff. I think few of them almost quit at that point, but then they held on. So eventually we got to the point where we got the motorcycle to run right, and it went to participate in some motorsport events as well. In fact, it participated in the Red Day Himalaya a couple of times. We finished on the podium as well. So I think the overall gist from this part is that while this was not really a mainstream build as such that would be a showstopper or anything like that, it triggered the evolution loop for us. The learnings we had from this build, they basically went back to each and everything we did at the workshop. There was a lot of planning that started to happen. There was a lot more inside design aspects. And in fact, we still follow a lot of that. So in our personal opinion, while this may not really be one of those fancy motorcycles, it's really the one that got us into the bigger game, understanding the physics, the science behind motorcycling as such. So I guess over the years, we built quite a few of this, stuff goes on. And the part I'm going to talk about now is, the balance of things overall. So when I started Exotica, back then I had a full-time IT job. And I used to like what I used to do. In fact, I still have that job. So it's a strange thing. A lot of people may think that, hey, that must be really chaotic, taxing, how do you manage both the things? But it really is not. And in fact, the building part gives me so much pleasure that it's literally fun. So it gives me a lot more freedom. It gives me the freedom to, choose my projects. For example, I would say, building motorcycles, you would classify a motorcycle builder as an artist at best. So as an artist, you wouldn't really build a masterpiece every day, right? One. Number two, you wouldn't really want to take every work that comes your way. Also. So then the question is, how do you make a business really viable? Like, how do you make things run? So that's where the other aspect of my IT job comes in and pitches in and gives us the freedom to do what we really would want to do with things overall. To conclude, I think it's been a great journey. It's been 10 years, and I think what really we have gained in these 10 years is experience of building beautiful motorcycles. And I think more than that, meeting beautiful people that have come across this journey of building bikes, coming to India Bike Week, meeting them, and friends forever, people with a common passion. And I think to that effect, I would say that the India Bike Week has really been that platform for a lot of people probably like me. They put in so much effort for people to come together and put up such a good show where we can come and, share the art we create. So that's really my story. If you guys have any questions, I guess we'll start with that.
Your vibe and your energy is truly infectious. So before we take the questions from the audience, I have a couple of questions.
Sure,
yeah?
Sure,
Would like
sure.
to sit down for it?
Sure,
yeah?
Sure, absolutely.
So, why don't you just be seated here? Perfect. So, Arjun, could you take us through, your most challenging times and, what were the learnings for you from them?
I guess there are no shortcuts. I would say the first thing. Whenever you try to take any shortcut, it has literally resulted in a long cut. So take your time if you really want to do something. I would say if it's a motorcycle project, take your time to scope out things very well. There is really no short way around it. So that's really the greater learning. So we spend a good amount of time in thinking about a project. then, jumping straight into it and start to really do things.
Fantastic. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi Arjun, Kyle here. I've been a lifelong fan of your work and I've seen it evolve through the years. So you're quite a refreshing change to what social media has been telling us, which is it's all or nothing, right? You live only once, you take the plunge, you go all in. But here you give a perspective to where achieving balance is critical to make it sustainable and viable long term. So what is your message to anybody aspiring to, have a side gig or a side hustle building motorcycles, or even venturing into slight, cosmetic modifications, if not full-on builds?
I think the answer is actually a part in your question, Kyle, if I think about it. I think the first thing is the side gig. You think of it as a side gig. I would say start small. Don't take all your parents' money and invest in a motorcycle. I know people who have done that. And it's not gonna end well for you. And I think of it as a longer game and a longer race, as a marathon, rather than, let's say, just a sprint. So spend the money wisely. Try and find a side income from this. We can't really, again, going back to that whole conversation as an artist, we can't really wait for that perfect scenario or that perfect project or that perfect portrait that I may make. There may be a lot at hand right now. It may not look very big, but then it may be one of those stepping stones that will, get you, if you continue to do well and invest your time to, take your skills there and deliver.
I've just got one more question.
Sure.
So what you said about a lot of us being averse to learning, I draw a lot of parallels to what you said to Maxwell Hazan when I interacted with him years ago, which is a builder builds, right? It's not, if you see a lot of other builders today, they're more like managers that manage a group of people who contribute towards the build, but here you're hands-on. So what do you recommend? How does one start to learn? I know it's a very, at your level, it seems like a very inane question, but how does one begin? Where does one start the journey of learning to build a motorcycle?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I think it actually goes back to the story I was telling about the KTM Enduro that we were building. That we were so clueless, Kyle, when we were building that bike, that we went so wrong and we almost gave it up. But I think the one thing that came out of it was that I started to give out dedicated time for learning. That was outside of the time I was putting in at the shop. So let's say an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, whatever you can afford, but that's only learning, and you have to sort of, unless you're really a genius, and there are people like that, like Hazan is a very good example, the man is a genius. But we all aspire for things, right? We may not have the skills to do it right now, but then if you dedicate regular time to learning, I guess you can get pretty good with your skills to really get there.
Hi Arjun, I'm Risha. My question is a little bit more about balance in your work and how you give time to the motorcycling projects in the workshop, as well as having a career which are both extremely demanding. Work lines clash, and how do you deal with that?
So thank you for asking that. In fact, that was in a part of the discussion, but I think it's better I put it in the Q&A. So when I started to think about Exotica very seriously, I started to look at how I could reduce the hours I was putting in my corporate job. So I was on a lookout for this opportunity where I could, work lesser number of days, but more number of hours. So I sort of struck a deal with, at least in my case, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity. The company was looking for someone to work the weekends. And I volunteered myself, And that was going to be tough because there are not a lot of teams that are working. So it was only going to be literally a one-man show or 4-5 people show. It was tough on me, but I took that upon me. So I literally clocked 40 hours in 3 days. So it's, and again, it may come to the point where it's not a good work-life balance, but I would disagree because the rest of the days, I don't consider that I'm working. It's the passion that drives the fire. So regardless of the hours that are being put in, I'm really enjoying myself doing it. So I won't really classify the building part. While it may be taxing, but I won't really classify it as work. So for me, it's work literally for the past decade.
Actually, when you're persistent in your passion, I think magic truly happens eventually. And that's what I think you have unfolded in your own journey.
I won't know it's magic, but it sort of works for me in a lot of ways. And once I started to do this, I started to come across a lot more people who do something very similar. Maybe not the same passion, maybe in a different domain, but I've seen people do that. So I think to answer your question more precisely, I would say look for work that you can concentrate in less number of days than a 5-day week to begin with.
He's given you a career counseling as well.
Any jobs going like that?
Anybody else? Are we good to wrap up? Yeah? Yeah, sure. One more question coming up.
Hi, my name is Amit. Why Exotica? Because you are dealing with the most rugged thing, most...
Are you talking about the name?
yes.
Okay.
So exotic means something that's not regular. So even in the and it's a very fair question because custom motorcycles are not anyways a regular, right? But exotic was a way for me to express how what the work we were doing would stand out even from the rest of the custom builds. So that was really the reason for choosing it. By the way, there's a joke around. I won't share it here. There were other business prospects that could have come if this wouldn't have worked, but I'll just leave it at that.
Please.
Thank you so much, Arjun. We've had a wonderful time hearing you, and we've all learned so much. So can I request you all to please give Arjun a big round of applause, everybody?